We found the campsite on a Wednesday morning in October under a canvas tarp that should have rotted away before either of us got there. Not the tent, not the two folding chairs, or the old blue cooler sitting in pine needles with its lid bowed from age. The tarp. It hung between four jack pines on yellow nylon rope, tied in truckers' hitches, so clean they looked practiced. Army green, waxed, dry underneath. 20 years of Wisconsin rain had blackened every other piece of fabric in that campground, but this tarp still held a shallow pocket of last night's water in its belly, clear enough to reflect the trees above it. Then Mara touched the coffee pot. She had gone quiet the way she did when she was trying not to admit I had been right about something. She stood beside a two-burner Coleman stove, her hand on an aluminum percolator, and said, "It's warm." I thought she meant from the sun. That was possible in October, 37 degrees when we left Hayward at dawn, but by mid-morning the light had cut through the canopy and laid itself across the old picnic table. Then she lifted her hand and showed me the steam on her fingertips. "No," she said. "Sam, it's hot." I do cleanouts. That is the polite way of saying people pay me to deal with what they cannot stand looking at. Rental houses after evictions, pole barns after someone's father dies, lake cabins after divorces. You learn what time does to things. A paper plate left outside for a week curls into itself and goes soft. A sleeping bag in a damp shed grows mildew in one season. Propane rusts at the ring. Nylon sun fades. Plastic gets brittle in that deep, dry way where it cracks without warning. Coffee does not stay hot for 20 years. I said that out loud because sometimes saying the obvious is the only thing that keeps it obvious. Mara looked at me like I had missed the point. There was no flame under the pot. The fuel tank on the Coleman was empty. I unscrewed the cap and tilted it, expecting the sour smell of old white gas. Nothing came out except air and a dry metallic odor that had no business being there. Mara stepped toward the tent. "Don't," I said. She paused with one hand on the flap. Our father had died in July. 3 months later, we were still pulling his life apart one box at a time. He left no will, no instructions, no apology. One unpaid storage unit full of campground equipment he bought at auction in 2005 and never touched again. That was why we were here. A man named Tom Everly from the county office had called me about clearing a failed campground on private land near Moose Lake Road. When he gave me the parcel number, I recognized it from papers Dad had kept in a Folgers can under his basement sink. Pinehook Family Camp. Closed since 2004. Bought by our father the following spring, along with 12 picnic tables, 7 fire rings, a clapboard registration shed, and whatever the last owner had walked away from. Dad never told us he owned land up here. He never paid his taxes on time either, which was why the county was ready to take it. Tom gave us 2 weeks. Mara wanted to let them have it. I wanted to see if anything was worth selling. That was usually the shape of us. She wanted clean endings. I wanted one more look through the boxes. The entrance to Pinehook sat off a gravel spur with no sign, just 2 posts leaning in opposite directions. The driveway was washed out and overgrown with sweet fern. My F250 made it in with the mirrors folded. Mara followed in her Subaru, riding the brake the whole way. The registration shed had a green metal roof with one caved corner and a sliding window with a sun-bleached sticker that read, "Check out 11 a.m." Inside, mouse droppings, a broken swivel chair, a faded wall map, and a pegboard where numbered tags still hung from brass hooks. Sites 1 through 18. 18 tent sites arranged around a loop road, a bathhouse with no running water, 2 pit toilets, a narrow trail to a dark little lake with one crooked dock and a beaver lodge on the far shore. Somebody had loved this place once. You could see it in the small choices: flower boxes under the registration window, hand-rooted cedar site posts, horseshoes nailed to the bathhouse for decoration, picnic tables built from old-growth pine by someone who expected them to last. They had. Most of the rest had not. We walked the loop with clipboards, marking salvage and haul out. Sites 1 through 13 were what you would expect: collapsed screen houses, fire rings full of beer cans, a picnic table split down the middle by a young birch growing straight through it, slow, dirty, ordinary, scrap metal, burn pile, landfill, maybe keep. Then we reached Site 14. The post said 14 in faded black numbers. The driveway into it was narrow and covered with needles, but not grown over. Everywhere else, the campsites had gone fuzzy at the edges, young maples filling in, ferns crowding fire rings, grass knitting over old tire tracks. Site 14 looked like somebody had swept it. The pine needles lay in a clean, even layer. The old tire ruts were visible all the way to the picnic table. The fire ring had been emptied. The tarp was tight. Behind it stood a brown and orange dome tent from the late 90s, rainfly clipped into place. A pair of men's hiking boots sat outside the door. Beside them were 2 smaller pairs, children's sneakers, both with Velcro straps. Mara said my name the way people say it when they mean stop. Could be squatters, I said. Her look told me how thin that was. Squatters leave plastic bags, cigarette butts, food wrappers, propane bottles. They do not leave a camp arranged like a catalog photo from a 1998 Sears insert. On the picnic table, 4 plates stacked, a box of pancake mix, a jar of instant coffee with the label worn white, 2 red-handled forks lying side by side, and a folded newspaper sealed inside a Ziploc bag that had yellowed and stiffened with age. The paper inside looked dry. Mara picked it up before I could stop her. October 8th, 2004, she said. The date landed in my chest like a fist. Pinehook closed in 2004. I knew that from Dad's tax paperwork, where he had underlined it twice the way he did when he thought he was catching someone in a mistake. Final operating season 2004. Owner deceased. Property transferred at county auction April 2005. The newspaper was from the same week this place shut down. Mara set it back on the table. From inside the tent came a sound like fabric settling. Neither of us breathed. Then a drip fell from the tarp and hit the dirt beside the stove. Mara said, "Wind?" There was no wind. I stepped closer to the percolator. It had a black plastic handle and a dent near the spout. Old stovetop model with the clear knob in the lid. The kind my grandmother used before Mr. Coffee machines took over every kitchen counter. I did not want to touch it. That is the part people never believe. They think curiosity wins. Sometimes it does. Usually when something is wrong in a way your body understands before your head catches up. Every practical part of you says leave it alone. But Mara had already touched it, and I was still enough of an older brother to act like fear was something I could postpone for both of us. I put 2 fingers against the side of the pot. Hot, not boiling, not fresh off the burner. More like it had been sitting for 10 minutes after someone poured their first cup. I lifted the lid. Coffee smell rose into the cold air. Real coffee. Burnt a little. Strong. Metallic from the pot. It made the morning feel suddenly domestic, like we had walked into someone's kitchen without knocking. Mara backed away. I set the lid down exactly where it had been. Somebody was here, I said. When? Now. She scanned the site. No footprints except ours. No vehicle tracks. No bicycle. No kayak from the lake. No sound of anyone in the brush. The loop road lay empty in both directions, my truck and her Subaru visible through the trees, like two dumb modern animals that had wandered somewhere they did not belong. Hello? I called. The word went flat among the pines and died. Mara flinched. Don't do that. What should I do? Not invite whatever this is to answer. I called again anyway, because the alternative was accepting what we had found. No one answered. We should have left then. I know that. You know that. But bad decisions do not feel like bad decisions while you are making them. They feel like one more reasonable step, one more check, one more attempt to fit the situation into a shape you recognize. So I checked the tent. I used my boot to nudge the flap open. I did not reach inside. The smell came first. Canvas, old sleeping bags, a faint plastic sweetness from aging nylon. Under that, something like ivory soap. 4 sleeping bags, 2 adult size, 2 child size, rolled out neatly on foam pads, a duffel bag at the back, a paperback face down near one pillow, spine cracked, and between the 2 smaller sleeping bags, a little stuffed rabbit, gray with age, but not chewed, not mildewed, not dusty. No one inside, no bones, no scattered clothes, no animal nest, no sign of anyone leaving in a hurry. Just a family campsite paused in the middle of breakfast. Mara stood behind me. Sam, she said. I turned. She was looking at the fire ring. The ash was pale gray and fine, arranged in a soft cone under the grill grate. Clean hardwood ash from a fire that had burned down completely. Not fresh enough to glow. I crouched and held my hand over it. Warm. I dropped my hand like I had been stung. There are explanations people reach for because they need the world to stay a world where explanations work. Camper came through last night as a joke. Someone local maintains the site. The coffee was heated somewhere else and placed here. Hidden camera. Prank channel. Mara actually said that last one. Could be one of those channels. People do stupid things for videos. Out here, people do stupid things everywhere. I looked at the mud on the entrance road, soft from rain 2 nights before. My truck tread was clear as a fingerprint, the chipped block on my rear driver's side tire unmistakable. Mara's narrower Subaru tracks printed over mine where she had pulled around. No others, not new, not old, not since the rain. Then they walked in, I said, with a tent, stove, cooler, 4 chairs, and hot coffee. Before we left, I took pictures. Habit. Every clean out starts with photos. I shot the tarp knots, the stove, the percolator, the newspaper, the boots, the tent interior, the fire ring, the site post. Then Mara said very quietly, Do you smell pancakes? I did. Warm batter, butter, a little smoke. I turned toward the picnic table. The plates were still stacked. The pancake mix was sealed. The stove was off. But one of the forks had moved. When we arrived, both red-handled forks had been lying side by side near the plates, handles pointed toward the road. I had noticed because they were old Bakelite handles, the kind people collect now. Now one fork lay across the top plate, tines down, like someone had set it there after eating. Mara saw it too. We walked back to the truck without running. Running would have meant we agreed on what was happening. We had not. We had only agreed to leave. The loop road felt longer going out. Not impossible. Not yet. Just that quality roads get when you're trying not to look behind you, each bend holding a beat too long, each stand of pine familiar in a way that did not help. At the registration shed, Mara stopped. She pointed. On the pegboard inside the window, the brass hook for Site 14 was empty. I had seen that tag that morning. Cedar, with 14 burned into it, hanging with the others. Now it was gone. Did you take it? No. You sure? I almost snapped at her. Then I stopped. Our father stole small things, not expensive things, meaningful things. Matchbooks from supper clubs, motel keys, branded ashtrays, brass numbers from abandoned doors. When we were kids, Mara used to empty his jacket pockets after he fell asleep because she was afraid the police would come. It was not crazy for her to ask. No, I said, softer. I didn't take it. We drove out fast enough that branches scraped both sides of my truck. At the county road, my phone found 2 bars. I called Tom Everly. He answered with wind in the background. You get in okay? I asked whether anyone had permission to camp on the property. A half-second pause. Enough. No. Why? We found a site set up. What site? That question bothered me more than it should have. 14. The wind on his end went muffled, like he had turned his head. You and your sister should come back to town. I had not told him Mara was with me. What do you mean? Don't mess with it today. Come by my office. Tom, is somebody staying there or not? No. Then why? Sam. His voice changed. Less county administrator. More tired old man. Just come back in. His office smelled like toner and microwave soup. Deer calendars on the wall. Septic permit applications on the desk. He closed the door and took off his glasses. I should have said something, he said. Mara sat with her arms crossed. About the haunted campsite. He did not flinch. About people thinking it is. The way he said thinking told me he did not think it was only thinking. Pinehook had been owned by Ed and Lorna Prill from 1988 until Lorna died in 2004. Ed died 2 months later. No children, no proper books. By the time the county sorted the estate, the campground had already closed. Site 14 had a family on it that last weekend, Tom said. He slid a thin folder across the desk. Not a hidden archive. Photocopies, notes, a few newspaper clippings. The Vosses, Daniel and Paige, both 36. 2 children, Eli, 9, and Ruth, 6, from Eau Claire. Checked in October 8th, 2004. Paid cash for 2 nights. Never checked out. Their station wagon was found at the site, tent up, breakfast things on the table, coffee in the pot, cold by then. 6-day search. Deputies, volunteers, dogs, boats on the lake. No bodies, no clothes, no footprints past the first 100 yards. Nothing missing except the people. Tom handed me a photocopied newspaper photo. The Voss family beside the Pinehook sign in fall clothes. Daniel had a mustache and wire glasses. Paige wore a denim jacket. The boy looked bored. The little girl held a gray stuffed rabbit. My neck went cold. What happened to their gear? I asked. Family took some. Sheriff took some. Rest got thrown away when the place sold. To my father. Yes. You said nobody reported anything in years. Did Dad? Tom hesitated. He came in about a month after the auction and asked whether coffee could stay warm in an aluminum pot overnight. Mara closed her eyes. What did you tell him? I told him no. And? And he told me the coffee at Site 14 was hot. Mara stood so fast her chair barked against the floor. You knew that and sent us out there? I thought it was gone. Nobody's reported anything in years. Because nobody goes there, I said. He nodded once. He reached into the folder one more time. There's one more thing. A photocopied incident report. A typed statement from my father, May 2005. After someone called about smoke on the property. Harold James Whitcomb. I recognized his signature at the bottom. Big H, Lazy W. I entered Pinehook property approximately 0730 to assess salvage. Observed smoke at Site 14. Found campsite occupied in appearance, but no persons present. Coffee pot warm. Pancake batter mixed in bowl. One child's gray toy rabbit inside tent. Left site undisturbed. Returned to vehicle and observed unknown male near registration shed. Male approximately 30 to 40, wearing brown coat. Male asked if office was open. I advised property closed. Male asked, then where do we pay? I did not respond. Male walked towards Site 14. I left property. I read the last two lines twice. Tom turned the newspaper photo around and tapped at Daniel Voss's face. We drove to Dad's house without discussing it. His place outside Spooner sat on 3 acres of sandy soil. Half lawn, half machines. 2 snowblowers under tarps. A boat with no motor. 5 burn barrels, because one would have implied restraint. The house still smelled like him. Old coffee, pipe tobacco, he swore he had quit. Motor oil, and the lemon cleaner Mara had used after the funeral. We started in the basement. Dad kept everything in coffee cans, tackle boxes, and plastic totes labeled in black marker with words that no longer matched the contents. Plumbing had Christmas lights. Taxes had wrenches. Mom had one envelope with her obituary and nothing else. In a metal recipe box under a stack of old plat maps, we found the campground tags. Cedar, hand-rooted numbers, brass key rings. 1 through 18, all except 14. Beneath them lay a folded sheet of yellow legal paper in Dad's handwriting. Not a diary. Dad did not have the patience for reflection, more like a list. May 14th, 2005. Coffee hot again. Fire warm. No car. Heard kids by lake, but no tracks on trail. May 21st. Brought Ray. Ray saw nothing. Pot cold. Sight looked old. Ray laughed. May 22nd. Went alone. Pot hot. 4 plates. Fork on top plate. June 3rd. Took 14 tag. Sight gone when I went back. Just empty pad. Put tag in glove box. Dreamed of breakfast all night. June 5th. Returned tag to shed. Sight back. Woman asked if store sold syrup. Not Lorna. Younger. Blue jacket. Might be mother from picture. June 8th. Do not take anything. Do not eat. Do not answer questions that sound normal. Mara's voice came out flat. He made rules. I turned the page. June 12th. Man at shed again. Asked where to pay. I said office closed. He said, we already stayed. I left. June 19th. Coffee smell in truck after leaving. No coffee in truck. July 1st. Found little girl's rabbit on passenger seat. Burned it. Sight gone for 2 weeks. July 17th. Rabbit back in tent. Mine. Same burn on ear. The next lines were pressed so hard the pen had torn the paper. August 4th. Took pancake mix. Stupid. Wanted to test age. Box from 1998, but powder fresh. Threw in lake. Next morning mix on my kitchen table. Cupboard open. House smelled like campfire. August 5th. Returned mix. Apologized out loud. Felt like an idiot. Heard woman crying in tent. August 18th. I think they are not dead the way we mean. The last entry was shorter. September 9th. Sam asked why my coat smelled like smoke. Told him burn barrel. He believed me. I am done. I remembered that, not the question exactly. I remembered Dad coming home late one evening when I was 17, smelling like wet ash and maple smoke, his hands shaking while he tried to open a beer. I asked where he had been. He said burn barrel. I believed him because believing him required less work than not. In a locked toolbox under the workbench, we found the missing Site 14 tag wrapped in a shop rag. In the glove compartment of Dad's old Chevy, we found a small spiral notebook, blue cover, warped from damp. Inside were dates, 17 years of them. October 9th, 2008, delivered before sunrise. Did not see them. Coffee smell in shed. October 9th, 2009, delivered. Boy at table. Asked if lake had fish. Did not answer. October 8th, 2010, delivered. Woman crying. Took nothing. October 10th, 2011, delivered late. Sight at road when I arrived. Not on loop. Bad. October 9th, 2012, brought extra syrup. Sight normal. Heard Ruth laughing through 2022. Each entry the same shape. Delivered. Did not answer. Took nothing. The last entry was October 9th, 2023. Hard walk now. Chest hurt. Told them I was getting old. Daniel said, "You can send the children." I said no. He smiled. I should not have spoken. Mara pressed both hands over her mouth. "You can send the children." He had answered, not with yes. But he had answered, and then he died, and the tag had come to my kitchen. We found 6 Polaroids in a toolbox behind the water heater. 5 showed Site 14 in different states. Empty, occupied, empty again. Tent standing in snow. Picnic table set for breakfast under green summer leaves. The 6th showed my father sitting at the picnic table. He was younger, thinner, wearing the old red flannel he wore until the elbows went out. A blue enamel mug sat in front of him. He was looking down at his hands. Across from him sat a woman in a denim jacket. Her face was turned away. On the back, Dad had written, "She asked if I wanted my mother back. Our mother died in 1999, breast cancer, 41 years old. She spent her last week in a hospital bed in our living room because Dad refused to let her die under fluorescent lights. For years, that was the one thing Myra and I agreed he had done right. After Mom died, Dad changed, not sadder, porous. Things went through him. Money, anger, women, jobs, us. He loved us, I think, but he loved us like a man holding 2 cups with holes in them, furious at the water for leaving. If something at Pinehook offered him our mother, I understood why he went back. I hated that I understood. That night, I told Kelly everything. She listened at our kitchen table with both hands around a mug of tea she never drank. When I got to the part about the tag appearing in our kitchen, because I had held that back until now, she set her mug down very slowly. "When did you find it?" "Night before last. 4 in the morning. In our house." "Yes." She was quiet for a long time. "Are you going back?" Straight to the place I had been circling. "I think I have to return it." "Have to?" She said it the way she said it when Emma tried to explain why she had to stay out past curfew. Not disbelief. Inventory. Then she said, "Show me the spoon." I had not mentioned the spoon. I looked at her. She pointed at the kitchen counter. The red-handled spoon from Site 14 sat beside the sink, where neither of us had placed it. Something went through me then that was not fear and not courage. more like the moment when you stop pretending the water is shallow and your feet leave the bottom. Kelly stared at the spoon. How long has that been there? I don't know. She stood and stepped back from the counter, and the look on her face hurt me more than anything at Pine Hook had. Not because she was afraid, because she was right to be. The next morning, Mara would not answer her phone. 3 calls, 2 texts. At 8:12, she replied with one word, no. I drove to her duplex anyway. She opened the door in sweatpants and a look that said the conversation was already over. Give me the toolbox key, I said. No. It came to my house, Mara. That stopped her. I held up a paper bag. Inside were the tag and spoon, wrapped in a dish towel. She looked at the bag like it might breathe. When? Last night and the night before. Kelly saw. Yeah. Her expression tightened. Good. Then she can tell you not to go. She did. And? I'm here. She closed her eyes. Behind her, I smelled ordinary toast. Her apartment was warm and clean, and full of things she had bought new because she had never trusted anyone else's leftovers. I'm not helping you get killed, she said. I don't think that's what it does. You don't know what it does. No, but Dad returned things and kept living. That's your standard? Dad kept living? Fair. If it can come into my house, I said, ignoring it doesn't make it go away. She looked past me toward the driveway. When she spoke, her voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. I dreamed about Mom. I did not move. She looked embarrassed, angry at herself. Kitchen dream? I nodded. She was making pancakes, Mara said. She told me breakfast was getting cold. We stood in the open doorway with October air between us, and I understood the first real thing about Site 14. It did not scare you with what you feared. It tempted you with what you missed, not with miracles, with breakfast, with warmth, with the ordinary sounds grief preserves more clearly than faces. Mara grabbed her coat. I'm going, she said, because if you go alone, you'll do something stupid. Probably true. And we're returning the tag and spoon. That's it. We do not touch the coffee. We do not open the tent. We do not answer anybody. I know? No. You know Dad wrote it down. That's not the same as knowing. She locked her door and got into my truck. Kelly met us in the driveway. She wore Dad's old barn coat. She hugged Mara first, then me. Into my shoulder, she said, come back, stupid. That was something our mother used to say when Dad left for late drives in bad weather. Not come back safe. Come back stupid. It meant alive enough to be mocked. I held her until my arms shook. The drive north was quiet. Mist in the low fields. Deer along the fence lines with their heads up. The sun behind cloud cover, making the whole morning the color of dishwater. At the Pine Hook entrance, the chain was down, not cut, not broken, neatly coiled around the left post like someone had tidied up before company arrived. We drove in. At the registration shed, I stopped. The sliding window was open. I reached through and hung the 14 tag on its brass hook. The pegboard now held all 18 tags. Nothing happened. Mara held up the spoon. Sight? Yeah. We walked the loop. I carried a flashlight I did not need, and a pry bar I hoped I would not be stupid enough to use. Mara carried nothing. She said carrying a weapon made people imagine using it. The campground had changed. Not dramatically. More like the difference between an empty house and a house where someone has opened the windows. Branches moved aside. Ruts smoothed. Sight-posts straighter. The bathhouse roof still sagged, but the horseshoes on the wall had been straightened. Pine Hook was not restoring itself. It was being prepared. Site 14 appeared between the pines. The tarp was gone. The campsite stood open under the gray sky. 4 people sat at the picnic table. Daniel Voss in his brown jacket, Paige in her denim coat, Eli in a red sweatshirt, Ruth with a gray rabbit on her lap. They all turned when we stopped walking. Mara's hand found my arm. Her fingers dug in hard enough to leave marks I would find later. I looked at Daniel Voss, and my body went wrong. Not fear the way stories describe it. Not cold blood, not hair standing up. My legs simply stopped believing in themselves. My vision sharpened until every detail became accusation. The nick on his chin where he had shaved that morning. That morning, the dirt under one fingernail. The Packers logo on his sweatshirt under the jacket, a season from 20 years ago. He looked like a man at a campsite. That was the worst part. He looked completely, stubbornly normal. Paige smiled. Tired, not dead, not monstrous. A woman camping in cold weather with 2 kids and a husband who had probably forgotten to pack something. "You must be Harold's," she said, not a question. Mara looked at the ground. I carried the grocery bag. We had brought Dad's annual supplies without discussing it, because the habit had already become ours, and set it at the far end of the table, away from the place settings. Daniel stood. "Appreciate it." I said nothing. The boy Eli watched us with open suspicion. He had his mother's eyes and his father's posture, shoulders forward, guarding something he could not name. Ruth held the rabbit so hard its ears bent. Paige removed each item from the bag: pancake mix, coffee, syrup, bacon, matches, newspaper. When she saw the newspaper, her hands stopped. "What day is it?" she asked. Neither of us answered. She looked at the front page. October 9th, 2024. Her hands began to shake. I had thought, until that moment, that the Vosses were bait. Copies, shapes, designed to ask questions. But Paige reacted to the date like a real woman, seeing a number 20 years past where it should be. She sat down slowly. Daniel looked at the paper, then at us. "What year's this?" he asked. Mara whispered, "Don't." Ruth started crying. Not loud. Quiet, embarrassed crying. The kind children do when adults are scaring them and they do not want to make it worse. Eli moved closer to his mother. "Mom?" Paige covered the newspaper with both hands. Then she looked up at me. "Is my sister alive?" There are questions that are traps because something designed them that way. There are questions that are traps because mercy was not built for silence. Mara turned away, shaking. I did not answer. Paige nodded as if I had. Daniel sat beside her. His face went slack. For a moment, Site 14 was just grief. 4 people under pine trees being handed the fact of 20 years. No soundtrack, no revelation, just a family learning the world had kept going without them. Then the percolator began to bubble. Nobody had touched the stove. Steam rose through the clear knob. The coffee smell thickened until the air tasted brown. Mara pulled my sleeve. Then Ruth spoke. "Are we dead?" Mara broke. "No," she said, one word, barely more than breath. But the campsite heard it. Every sound stopped. No birds, no drip from trees, no shifting leaves. The coffee went silent inside the pot. Even the steam seemed to pause. Paige turned toward Mara. Her expression was not gratitude, not hope, recognition. "Oh," Paige said softly. "You can hear us." Eli stood up. Daniel looked at me, and from somewhere behind us, from the direction of the registration shed, my mother said, "Samantha." Nobody calls me Samantha because that is not my name. My name is Samuel, but Mom used to call me Samantha when I complained too much because she said I had the dramatic range of a 13-year-old girl from her soaps. Dad hated it. Mara loved it. I pretended to hate it and secretly did not. The voice said it exactly right. Teasing, warm, alive. I did not turn. Samantha, breakfast. Mara made a sound like something tearing. She turned toward the voice. That was when I saw the loop road behind us was gone. The truck was still there. Site 14 was still there. But beyond the truck, where the road should have curved back toward Site 13, there was only more campsite, more pines, more picnic tables, not 18 sites, hundreds, rows of them receding through the trees in a pattern Pinehook never had. Tarps, tents, screen houses, lantern poles, coolers, some from decades I recognized, a yellow dome tent like the one I bought my daughter in 2016, a silver Airstream half hidden behind birches, a canvas wall tent with smoke rising from a stovepipe. People moved among them, a man brushing his teeth beside a water jug, a woman folding towels, two boys carrying fishing rods toward a trail that had not existed that morning, an old couple in lawn chairs looking toward us with mild interest, the way neighbors watch a moving truck, and among the sights, standing in clearings or sitting at tables, children who looked wrong, not deformed, not transparent, just slightly out of season. A little boy in swim trunks stood under a shower with no water, staring at us with black lake mud up to his knees and a smile that did not reach his eyes. A girl in a sundress sat on a picnic table in the October cold, swinging her legs, humming a song that had no melody. A campground full of guests, all of them waiting. Mara saw them too. The Voss family had risen from the table. Behind them, the tent flap hung open. Inside was dark. Not tent dark, not shadow. Deep, indoor dark. Like a hallway with no lights and no end. My mother's voice came from that dark. Both of you, before it gets cold. Mara stepped forward. I pulled her back hard enough to hurt. She spun on me, crying, furious. For a second, she was 16, and I was 19, and we were in a hospital parking lot after Mom died, hating each other because there was nowhere else to put it. You don't get to stop me, she said. It isn't her. You don't know. Yes, I do. No, you're scared it is. That landed, because I was. If it was not Mom, leaving was survival. If it was, leaving was abandonment. That was the question Site 14 asked, better than any words. Not, are you hungry? Not, will you stay? It asked what kind of person walks away from someone they love, calling them to breakfast. Paige Voss said, don't go in. We both looked at her. Her face had changed. The softness was gone. She looked fully alert in a way she had not before Mara answered Ruth. Do not go in the tent, she said. Daniel grabbed her wrist. Paige? No, she said. They brought the date. She stepped toward us. Every other person in the impossible campground turned to watch. You have to close your account, she said. I shook my head. What? Your father paid enough to keep your name loose. Not gone. Loose. Now he's gone. We don't understand. I know. We didn't either. The first time you answer because it's rude not to. The second time you accept because they already poured it. The third time, someone you miss asks you to sit down. She paused. After that, you are not missing. You are staying. Mara whispered, how long have you been here? Paige looked at the newspaper. Breakfast. Not 20 years. Not one morning. Breakfast. The worst answer she could have given. Daniel took off his glasses and wiped them on his shirt. The gesture was so normal, it made me want to scream. I just wanted to pay, he said quietly. Paige looked back at us. There are 3 ways out. Finish what your father started, trade, or be invited properly. What does trade mean? I asked. Paige's face closed. Behind us, my mother's voice said, Mara, honey. Mara folded. Not physically. Something in her posture, something she had been holding since 1999, gave way. I saved the thin ones for you. That was too specific. Mom used to make thin pancakes for Mara, almost crepes, because Mara hated the heavy biscuit kind Dad liked. Mara took one step toward the tent. I did the only thing I could think to do. I answered first. Mom, I said. Mara froze. The campground inhaled. That is the only way I can describe it. The pines, the tents, the people, the gray morning. All of it drew breath through the same hidden throat. Mom, I said again, we can't stay. The dark inside the tent shifted. My mother stepped out. She looked 41, younger than I am now, hair tied back, blue sweatshirt with the sleeve cuffs pushed up, no cancer weight, no hospital bed. She carried a spatula in one hand. She looked at me, then at Mara. Oh, look at you, she said. Mara sobbed once. I had prepared for a trick. I had not prepared for tenderness. Paige Voss backed away from her. That scared me more than the expanding campground, more than the faceless guests, more than the dark inside the tent. Paige, who had been living inside this thing for 20 years, backed away from whatever was wearing my mother's face. The thing smiled sadly. You came all this way, I said. You're not her. No, it said. No denial, no performance. Just the truth, offered gently, like a host correcting a small misunderstanding. Mara made a sound I never want to hear again. The thing looked at her. But I can be what you kept. Please don't. I can make breakfast the way she did. I can remember the songs. I can tell you what she would have said when your first marriage ended. I can hold your daughter before she's born. I can sit at every table you set for the rest of your life. Mara was shaking her head, but she was listening. The thing turned to me. And you. It paused. I can tell you he was sorry. Dad's voice, not from its mouth, from behind me. Sammy? He hadn't called me that since I was small. I stared at my mother's face until it blurred. The thing said, in a voice that was hers and his, and something older than both, Harold paid badly, but he paid. Once a year he brought breakfast and left hungry. That is not nothing. What are you? I asked. It smiled. A place where no one has to leave before they are ready. The most beautiful lie is the one that sounds like mercy. Nobody is ever ready. Mara whispered. What is the trade? The thing looked at her. Paige Voss closed her eyes. Daniel sat down hard at the picnic table. One guest may check out, it said, when another checks in. Mara looked at Ruth. The little girl held her rabbit and stared at the ground. No, I said. Mara did not look at me. That family has been here 20 years. No. Dad kept them here. Whatever this is, kept them here. And he knew. Yes. He brought groceries and left them. I had no answer for that. The thing wearing Mom held out one hand, not to me, to Mara. You always wanted someone to choose you first, it said. I saw then what it was doing. Not temptation, selection. It had taken the shape that could open Mara, not me. Dad's apology was bait. Mom's attention was the hook. I stepped between them. Take me, I said. Mara's eyes snapped open. The thing looked at me with pity that fit my mother's face perfectly. That is not how hospitality works. You cannot offer a chair that is not yours. Paige whispered from behind me. You have to be invited, or you have to ask. Ask. Where do we pay? Can we stay another night? Do they sell syrup here? Every normal question was a request. Each one gave the host a chance to accept. Mara understood at the same moment I did. Her face went calm in a way I did not trust. No, I said. She looked at me and smiled sadly. For once in her life, she looked older than me. Then she turned to my mother's face and said, Can I stay for breakfast? The campground bloomed. Color came into everything. The gray morning warmed. Lantern glass shone amber. Smoke rose, sweet and straight, from every fire ring. Guests at distant sites began laughing, calling to each other, setting plates. The whole impossible place woke up like a house on Christmas morning, and it was so beautiful that for one terrible second I understood why people stayed. The Voss children stared at Mara. Paige covered her mouth. Daniel began to cry. I grabbed Mara by both shoulders. Take it back. She touched my face. You have Kelly. That's not a reason. You have Emma. Our daughter, 14, at school right now, probably pretending not to care about a biology quiz. You have a life you didn't spend trying to escape. That's not true. It's enough true. The thing wearing our mother placed a hand on Mara's shoulder. I hid it. I am not proud of that. It was not brave. It was a child's response. I swung at my dead mother's face with my right fist and felt my knuckles pass through something that had the give of wet flour and the cold of lake water in November. The athletic tape on my hand split. A thin line opened across one knuckle. Blood welled. Every guest in the campground turned. Every single one. Hundreds of faces swiveling like flowers toward the sun. The thing looked down at my hand. Then it smiled with my father's mouth. There, it said. Now there is family on the table. Paige Voss screamed, Run! Everything moved at once. Mara shoved me toward the truck. Eli shouted, Mom, now! Daniel grabbed both children under his arms, though Eli was far too big. Paige seized the blue enamel mug from the table and poured the coffee onto the dirt. The ground hissed like a hot griddle. Steam rose in a shape that was almost a hand. The truck was farther away than it had been. The road beyond it flickered between the Pine Hook Loop and the endless campground, guests rising from their tables, not running, just standing, watching, their faces full of something that was not anger and not hunger, but the patient expectation of someone holding a door open. My father's voice called my name from 3 directions. Mara got to the truck first. She threw open the passenger door and shoved me in. My bleeding hand smeared across the dashboard. She ran around the hood and got behind the wheel. The engine would not start. Click. Corroded battery terminals. I had been meaning to clean them for months. Click. The thing with my mother's face walked toward us. Not fast. It had time. It had all the time breakfast takes. It leaned down near my window. My mother's eyes looked in at me, and they were gentle, and they were patient, and behind them was a darkness that had been setting tables since before anyone called this place a campground. You're bleeding, she said. I heard myself say, I know. Mara slapped me, hard enough to crack through the cab like a rifle shot. Don't answer. Too late. The thing smiled. From behind it, Paige Voss shouted, Ask to leave! Mara rolled down her window. Can we leave? She screamed. The thing turned. For the first time, it looked annoyed, not angry, annoyed. A host interrupted during grace. That is not asked of me, it said. Paige pointed at the registration shed. Ask the office. Mara threw herself out of the truck and ran. I followed. The campground shifted around us as we sprinted. The loop road stretched and shortened. Site posts changed numbers. I passed Site 6 3 times. The bathhouse appeared with lights on and steam on the mirrors. The boy with mud on his legs stood under the waterless shower and called after us in a voice like a screen door closing. Mara reached the shed first. The window was open. Inside, the pegboard held hundreds of tags now: cedar, plastic, hotel keys, brass discs, scraps of paper pinned with nails, each one a name, each one a guest who had answered when they should not have. Footsteps on the gravel behind us. Many footsteps, not running, walking with the confidence of people coming to breakfast. On the counter sat the guest card, old cardstock, blue lines, little pine hook logo stamped in the corner, name, Whitcomb. Below, in a different hand, children expected, and beside it, a pencil on a string. I grabbed the card with my left hand. Mara hissed, "No taking." "I'm not taking, I'm closing." I turned it over. The back had a printed line, "Balance due." Under it, in Dad's handwriting, 17 tally marks, one for each year. Below that, new words appeared as I watched, ink bleeding up through the cardstock like a bruise surfacing, blood received. The footsteps stopped behind us. The thing wearing my mother said, "You can settle." Mara looked at me. I understood. One guest checks out when another checks in. The Voss family stood at the edge of the clearing. Paige held both children. Daniel gripped the newspaper against his chest, like proof of a world that still existed. They looked less solid now, or maybe the world around them looked less convinced of itself. Mara whispered, "They have kids." "So do I." "I know." That was the whole knife of it. She reached for the pencil. I grabbed her wrist. "No, Sam, no. You can't stop me twice." I looked at her. My sister, who had spent her whole life turning pain into usefulness because nobody had protected her when she needed it. My sister, who believed sacrifice was the only way to make love visible because no one had ever shown her another way. I said, "I'm not stopping you." Then I took the pencil and wrote my name, Samuel Whitcomb. Mara screamed. The campground went silent. The thing behind us said very softly, "That is an offer." I turned. My mother's face watched me. Mara was crying. "You have Kelly." "I know." "You have Emma." "I know." "Then why?" Because Ruth held her rabbit like it was the last real thing in the world. Because Daniel had the newspaper pressed to his chest the way you hold evidence that the world exists. Because Dad spent 17 years bringing groceries to a table he would not sit at, and all his cowardice had still been a form of trying, and I could not let that be the end of what the Whitcombs left behind. Because Mara would never forgive herself for surviving if the Voss children did not. Because I was tired of our family making women pay first. I did not say any of that well. I just said, "Go home, stupid." Mara broke then. The thing stepped toward me. Then the office bell rang, a little brass bell on the counter that had not been there before. Bright, cheerful, final. The sound a desk clerk makes when your room is ready. The Voss family moved. Paige ran first, pulling Ruth. Daniel carried Eli, the boy's arms locked around his father's neck. They passed so close I felt the air change, felt it go warm, then cold, then warm again, like walking through a doorway between two rooms. Paige looked at me once. "Thank you," she said. I bit through the inside of my cheek to keep from answering. They ran down the loop road. With each step, they became less specific, not fading, becoming ordinary. Paige's denim jacket lost its impossible newness. Daniel's brown coat softened into something a real man would wear on a real October morning. The children's faces blurred into the faces of any children running. At the bend by Site 3, they turned the corner and were gone, not into smoke, not dramatically, the way people are gone when they leave. The campground exhaled. The hundreds of sights shimmered. The guests looked up from their tables. Some sat back down. Some turned away. The thing with my mother's face looked at the card, then at me, then at the blood on my hand. Samuel Whitcomb, it said. Site 14. Mara moved between us. No. The thing tilted its head. He offered. He didn't ask. That stopped it. It stopped everything. Mara took the card from my hand and held it up, her arm shaking so badly the cardstock rattled like a leaf. He wrote his name. He did not ask to stay. The thing's face changed. For 1 second it was not Mom, not Dad, not anyone. Just hunger wearing the memory of a face, and behind the face, a patience so vast it made the pines seem young. Then it smiled. Clever girl, it said in my father's voice. Mara stood her ground. He offered payment. You accepted. The family checked out. The account is closed. The thing looked toward the road, where the Vosses had disappeared. The campground seemed to listen to itself. The hundreds of guests went still. The smoke stopped rising. For a moment, the whole place held its breath and considered. I do not know whether Mara was right because the logic was real, or because the thing enjoyed rules enough to be caught by them. Maybe there is no difference. It held out its hand for the card. Mara did not give it. No taking, she said. She set the card on the counter face down. Then she grabbed me and pulled. We walked backward, then fast, then running. The campground didn't chase us. That might have been worse. Guests watched from their tables. Some looked hopeful. Some looked jealous. Some looked bored in the particular way of people who have been waiting so long that hope has calcified into routine. A woman in a yellow raincoat raised one hand as if to wave, then let it fall. An old man, at a sight that should not exist, held up an empty mug and tilted it toward us, asking without asking. At the truck, the engine started on the first turn. I do not understand why. We drove out without speaking. At the entrance, the chain was up. I drove through it. The posts snapped. The chain whipped under the frame and banged for a quarter mile before falling loose behind us somewhere in the real world. On the county road, Mara pulled over. She got out, walked 10 feet into the ditch, and screamed until her voice was gone. I sat behind the wheel with my hand wrapped in a towel and watched the tree line. Nobody came out. Nobody asked where to pay. Myra drove me to urgent care. Cut on rusted sheet metal, I said. Tetanus shot. 4 steri strips. Kelly met us there, and I have never seen a face hold as many things at once as hers did when she realized I was alive and also not whole in some way she could not name. That night, I told her everything, all of it. She listened at the kitchen table. When I got to the part where I wrote my name, she stood and walked onto the porch. I thought she might leave. She came back 10 minutes later with red eyes and said, I understand why. I hate you for it a little. Both of those can be true. She sat down across from me and took my bandaged hand and held it the way you hold something that almost got taken and might still. Both are still true, she said. They still are. Mara and I hired a forestry crew 2 weeks later to drop trees across the Pine Hook entrance. We let the county take the parcel for back taxes. Tom Everly retired the following spring. Before he did, he mailed me Dad's thin folder and a note. I am sorry I left this with your family. I hope quiet is enough. Quiet has not been enough, exactly. The Voss family came back, not to us. 3 days after we left Pine Hook, a hunter found 4 people walking on Moose Lake Road, 6 miles from the campground. Cold, dehydrated, confused. The children were still children. Daniel and Paige still looked 36. It made the news for about a week. Family missing since 2004 found alive. No memory of past 20 years. Authorities baffled. People argued online about hoaxes, cults, witness protection, the usual noise. I watched one interview. Paige sat under studio lights, Daniel beside her, the kids quiet against them. The reporter asked what they remembered. Paige said, "Breakfast." Then she looked into the camera in a way I felt in my teeth and said, "And a woman telling us not to answer if anyone asked us to stay." Mara refused to watch. She moved to Duluth in January. New contract, then permanent. She calls more now, not because things are fixed, because we both understand there may not be time later to become the kind of siblings we meant to be. She still dreams about Mom. So do I. Mom is always in the kitchen, making pancakes. The room is warm. Morning comes through the windows. She hums with her back to me. I never sit down. That is the rule I keep. Kelly and I do not make pancakes in the house anymore. Emma thinks we need therapy. She is right. We go. It helps the way sandbags help against a river, not stopping it, giving the water a shape to push against. My hand healed with a thin white line over the knuckle. Most days, it is just a scar. On cold mornings in October, it warms before the rest of me. That is not the part that made me record this. Last week, a padded envelope came to my shop with no return address. Inside was the blue enamel mug from Site 14, wrapped in a page from the October 9th, 2024 newspaper. The mug was clean, no cracks, no rust. At the bottom, where old coffee stains should have been, someone had written my name in pencil. Not Samuel, not Sam, Samantha. Kelly wanted to smash it. Mara said bury it. I drove north before sunrise and left it on the broken pavement at the old Pine Hook entrance, beside the fallen chain and the trees we paid to drop. I did not go in. I did not call out. I did not answer when, from somewhere deep in the pines, past the downed trunks and the grown over road, my father said the coffee was getting cold.